You see them, that's a plus.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. I can really tell you this.
I realize how much I really like wearing glasses after wearing them often.
I can even believe it.
Yeah.
All right, seeing that it's 6 o'clock, I'm gonna call this meeting of the Enfield Select Board to order. And we are going to start with the approval of the minutes. I would entertain a motion to open up that discussion. And I guess also consider whether you want to take them together, both April 3rd and April 17th, or if you want to address them individually.
I move that we accept them both as presented.
Second.
Are there any questions, comments, or corrections? Okay, I'm not seeing anyone in the audience here, and then online, I don't see any hands raised. Okay. All those in favor of approving the minutes as printed? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you. Board reports. We'll start at the beginning and start with Eric.
Yeah, so the planning board is sort of getting ready for the season. Rob gave a nice report around building permits are starting to come in, number of renovations, solar installations, additions. Interesting thing, they're not getting single family home requests at this point. However, the interest in the ADUs and the new ADU zoning that we did is high. So he's had more than 20 calls in the last like 6 weeks just learning about ADUs, and is preparing some presentations for various real estate groups around what that change means for properties. And then other than that, it was just sort of coming up to speed on where a few things stand, but no real business. But that was the ADU thing is the most interesting thing that it seems a lot of people are asking about, and Rob's spending time, educational time, teaching people about them. So.
Alice, do you have any reports?
I do. So the Enfield Village Association is continuing to plan for the Shaker 7, which is coming up on June 25th. Actually working with Recreation and Kevin a little bit to understand how we can make it, we're trying to make it a bigger event after COVID. So then the Heritage Commission met. I went to a little bit less than half of that meeting. And the main discussion was around Old Home Days. They elected their chair and vice chair for the year, so that I guess was business that needed to be done. They need volunteers for Old Home Days, and there was a lot of talk about the Scenic Byway grant, which I was learning about, and then a couple days later I got an email that they received it, so that was awesome. They'll be very excited. And then I had to leave that early so I could go to the Johnson Property Use Committee meeting, which was the first of the two public input sessions, and I think there were 17, thank you, people in attendance online. And while we hope to have more people at the in-person session, it was still great to see that people showed up for this one. It went really well. The committee learned a lot, and we look forward to learning more.
Awesome, thank you.
I have nothing to report.
Tracy?
I attended the second half of the Energy Committee this past week. I missed the first half because I was at the Municipal Facilities Advisory Committee meeting on that decision process, which will come up later in the agenda. The biggest concern of the Energy Committee is just monitoring what's happening with the implementation around the state of the community power program. Some difficulties in other parts of the state, minor influence for Enfield ratepayers due to a difficulty getting Eversource to cooperate with the program. We have 66 ratepayers in the town of Enfield who have Eversource, who would be eligible for the program. And because Eversource is not cooperating at this point, there's been a little bit of difficulty in getting things flowing with them, but for the Liberty utility ratepayers, they should see it affecting their bill this coming bill period for those that are on the program and not solar. That's another program which is going to be worked on statewide as things progress.
There's a quick question, Tracy, just for clarification. So the Eversource holdup is not holding up the Liberty process?
No, the Eversource holdup is not holding up the Liberty process. It is a bureaucratic holdup by Eversource alone.
Okay.
And Conservation Commission will meet on Thursday, so I don't have a report. I will have a report at the next meeting for you. Does anyone have questions or comments on the reports from the board? Any questions or comments from the folks online on board report? Okay, seeing none, we're gonna move on to the town manager's report.
Thank you. Staff report, not really a lot of changes. We're still looking for 2 police officers. So if anybody knows anybody that would like to apply, as I mentioned at the last meeting, we advertised that we'd be open to talking with people about some sort of sign-on bonus for certified officers. I did have a discussion with the police chief that Lebanon and Hanover are now offering some sort of sign-on bonus for non-certified officers. So we'll continue to look at that. Everybody's struggling to get police officers in their ranks, so we'll keep you advised as things move forward, and all other positions are still currently staffed. Public safety building, our contractors continue to work on design and costing of the public safety building. We did have a preliminary meeting with New Hampshire Department of Transportation. That meeting went very well. They did have a little bit of concerns, but they all kind of were around stormwater runoff and making sure that we catch as much water as we can that doesn't run down into Route 4 because our site's elevated above the road. But that was pretty much the only thing. They didn't have any other concerns about us having a driveway there or putting some lights up to warn people that emergency vehicles were coming. We'll just work with them on procedure as we do that. I won't talk too much about the Whitney Hall project. We'll be talking about that later. One thing that I think fits a little bit better now is the MFAC committee did ask me to talk, and we talked with the contractors as we interviewed them about the possibility of moving that project up. Our plans were to build the public safety building and then Whitney Hall because of the logistics of having places to move people in the library or town staff in the library. We did talk with the contractors, and both of them stated that they would be able to do that and possibly get started this winter. So, again, there's a lot of things that go into that, logistics, costs, bunch of things we'll have to talk about with the contractors, but I just wanted to let you know that that is a possibility of being able to move that project up and getting it started quicker. And then we've applied for the Grafton County grant that I told you guys about last time to put the exhaust ventilation system in the fire department. So that grant application went in. We did receive word today from Senator Shaheen on the congressional direct spending that she moved our grant forward, and it's now in the queue in the federal government to possibly get funded. So we'll stay on top of that and see where we're at, and hopefully those both get funded. Wanted to let the select board know that I continue to work on the double power pole issue, mainly focused around Lake Street, Dartmouth Street, Moore Street, and Shaker Hill Road. It's been ongoing since when Ryan was here trying to get that done. I've been talking with Consolidated Communications. I finally got a little frustrated with them. They were saying that it was more of a Comcast issue because it's Comcast equipment still on those poles. So I looped our government rep from Comcast in and our executive counselor, and the conversation got a little bit more interesting after that. So hopefully we'll continue to push that and we'll get that issue taken care of. The Shed Street project is moving along. I signed a proposal this last week to conduct additional groundwater and soil sampling needed by Crederi Associates. They're the associates that did the environmental study for us and that we've been working with this whole time. I did get an email this week that they're planning to conduct those water and soil samples this week, possibly on Thursday. And then they will also, that contract I signed is also them helping us with the RFP process to have the asbestos abated and possible demolition. So we'll be working through that this summer in preparation of demolishing those buildings and preparing Shed Street for possible sale. With that, just wanted to update the board that DPW, I gave them permission last week. They're beginning construction of a full storage barn out back here for some of the equipment that was in there. They did have a stack of used trusses that they found, and then they also were able to pull together some other materials and some roofing materials, and they're pretty much going to be able to build this entire shed from recycled materials. That'll help them out. And then I did tell them if there was any existing cost, they would need to find it within their own budget for this year. So they're working on that, and they're excited to get something to put some of that equipment under for winter time. With that, the water project on Maple Street has begun. You guys probably seen everybody out there working. L&M Construction's been removing trees and vegetation where the new water main's going, and they've progressed from Route 4 to a point beyond the May Street intersection. There will be, and we announced this today on a lot of electronic media, that there'll be a system-wide shutdown of the Enfield water system on Wednesday, May 3rd at 1 o'clock. This will allow for installation of a pipe valve that they had. We were gonna do it last week or the week before? You may have heard a little chatter that water pressure went down. What they found was an older project from a long time ago. When they replaced a water line by EBS, they didn't decommission the other side, and we have no way to shut that down. So we're gonna have to shut the whole system down to go ahead and get this valve in place. If all goes well, we expect the water to be down from 2 to 4 hours then. They did choose that day, working with the school and other people in town. That's an early release day for the school, so kids will be out of session. So we decided that would be the best day to make this call and to shut the system down for a couple hours. The TV inspection that you guys awarded at the last meeting, VCP has already been in town. They've started that project. They're working. They inspected Shed Street, Union Street, and Pillsbury Street and already found 2 significant issues where stormwater was infiltrating the sewer system. So that's exactly what we're looking for. Those places will be put on a list as part of this project to be repaired, which will help us on the cost side of things, because every gallon of water that goes down the sewer, we pay treatment costs for when it goes to Lebanon. So it's a good project, and we'll continue scoping all of the sewer lines and make sure that we're not having infiltration. And the rain the last couple of weeks has really helped us with that project. So,
Yeah.
Oak Hill Road Bridge, as I stated before, that's still being scheduled to be replaced at the end of May. The bridge will be closed for 3 to 4 weeks during construction. Arbor Day, we had our proclamation at the last meeting, and the grounds crew has planted a red maple in Lakeside Park in celebration of Arbor Day on April 28th. This tree will be used by County Tree to demonstrate the water bag. It's a system for aiding the establishment of new landscape trees. So if you guys get a chance, go by there and you'll see the new tree and the water bag system that'll be watering it.
Where was that again? I'm sorry. I missed that.
Lakeside Park.
Thank you.
I already got a question on the water bag.
Did you?
Yep. Someone thought.
And then I would like to let everybody know that Saturday, May 6th, this Saturday from 9 to 12 at Lebanon High School will be the first household hazardous waste collection day. So if anybody has any hazardous waste that they need to drop off, this Saturday from 9 to 12 at Lebanon High School. And then DPW just wanted me to let you know that they'll be meeting with the State Bridge Project Manager on the Shaker Boulevard Bridge, which will be being replaced with state funds. So they're working on that. It was a 2029 project, but it's now been moved up to 2025. So we're looking forward to completing that project.
That little bridge that was a temporary one that's been I didn't think it was bad, is it?
It's temporary. So,
Do we have matching funds involved in that?
no. The state's paying for it.
And we own that Bailey Bridge, correct?
Yes.
It was a great fast solution, really big problem.
Now we have two Bailey Bridges.
It works and yes. we
Oh,
will
it's great.
keep That.
But we can keep the bridge. Okay, that's really
Yeah,
what I
no,
wanted.
no,
is
we
can
own it.
Keep our bridge.
It's our bridge.
We can put it in storage with our other things.
Put it on McKenna Street.
So other than that, DPW crews starting cleanups, they're finishing cemetery cleanups, and they'll be starting lawn mowing this week if the rain stops. And then road postings have been lifted throughout town. And then, as you guys were known, and we will let others know if they didn't watch the news today, that we were awarded there's a National Scenic Byway Program grant. We named it the Walk a Mile in Their Shoes Transportation Alternative. So we'll be working on a project to build a alternative transportation trail from Shakoma Beach down to the Shaker Village. And it'll also pay for parking along the Main Street side of Lakeside Park. We were awarded $734,000 from the federal government for that project. So
Do we bid that project out or does the state bid that project out?
we'll bid that project out as part of the,
So are we able to combine it with the work that we had in mind for the Lakeside Pavilion Park?
no, that's two completely separate projects. The parking on the other side was never part of.
No, I understood that, but I mean, in terms of construction, are we able to combine the projects and therefore bid that out as
I-
one unit?
I doubt it, because I don't think it'll be fully engineered before the Lakeside Park parking lot is gonna be built, so. The Lakeside funds need to be spent by next year, and this, I'm sure, won't be engineered by then, so.
Congrats to you and your team, though. It's a significant amount of money and a nice
Big project.
nice tie-in to improve safety in an area we know people walk, whether or not it's safe, and with the boat trailers, it gets a lot harder.
Well, with that, I would also like to thank Jeremy Clay, Jim Taylor, and Chief Holland. We were notified this last week that the FEMA grant for the Christmas storm that I told you we were putting in for the disaster, our submission was accepted. So now we just have to do the paperwork to get reimbursed that $30,000-ish that we have.
It's great.
I just thank them for keeping meticulous records and
Yeah.
being able to put that forward so quickly. We do have a non-native invasive species workshop this Saturday, May 6th at 10 o'clock at the community building. We'll be inside for an hour or so, and then we'll be going outside to look at some of the non-native species there and looking at how to deal with them if you happen to have in your yard anywhere else. I did release the Methodist Hill property use applications today, so they went out on the website. We're putting out announcements for that. Those will be due May 24th at noon. So we have a few weeks for people to go ahead and apply for that, and then we'll bring it forward for the select board to make that decision. And then I also wanted to let you know that at the next meeting, we'll have a strategic planning kickoff, and our consultant Russ from Sojourn Partners will be here. It'll take up a large portion of your meeting. We're thinking it's gonna be about an hour time frame or so of that meeting, but we'll do a kickoff for that, and then we'll be looking for some dates that we can put together in June to have a retreat to finish that project or get a good start on it. And that is my manager.
Did I see this afternoon that Alyssa posted the invasive plant PowerPoint presentation to the listserv?
Not the PowerPoint presentation, the final report was.
The final
posted.
report.
It's on our town website. We posted to the listserv and Facebook, the link, so you can find it easily.
Will we be putting their PowerPoint presentation on the
I
town
don't have
website?
a PowerPoint presentation. I can see if I can get it, but we were mostly just listing the,
It might be
The
good. We
report.
do have the video, though, right?
we do have the video.
So we could potentially reference the video as a link and give the time within the meeting. Certainly wouldn't hurt anybody to watch the whole meeting, but if they
We'll
were,
get the PowerPoint. I mean, it was a paid project, a paid contract, if you will. So I would
Yeah,
think
the
we could get the PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, they usually just don't say much if you don't have the.
I like the narrative a lot better. I mean, a good PowerPoint doesn't have the narrative.
Mhm. And it didn't have much in it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the key talking points to move you along. Otherwise you just read the report like it's a book. So, but I'm sure we could do something to help facilitate people accessing that information, because I've given a few people that and told them the minute
Mhm.
I can go back and look it up. Don't know where it is off the top of my head, but that's a good question. Other questions on the town manager's report from the board?
Just a brief follow-up on the Main Street, water line project and the shutdown that's coming along. Will this be an opportunity to repair either one of the hydrants that have been down for several months, especially the one at Jake's?
I don't believe so, no.
We won't be able to do that at this time.
We're waiting on parts and other things.
Well, I thought the one at Jake's was a mechanical repair that we were prepared to do at some point.
We'll be doing it sometime, but yeah, not as part of this. I'm sure they'll be busy enough trying to get this.
So I thought it was town folks, but that's okay.
They'll be doing.
Yeah.
They're deeply involved with the water line project
Yeah.
too, so.
Other questions from the board on the town manager's report? Okay, any questions from the public? Gary?
I noticed on the meeting minutes for the MFAC that, with enough misinformation, the level 2 charges were taken off of the budget and everything. Because, 8+ hours was quoted as charging times for vehicles. I'd just like to offer a little clarification if I could. It took me like 1 minute on a search of Google that Clipper Creek makes an 80 amp, 208, 240 volt, level 2 charger, which is literally 30 amps more than what a Tesla can actually take. So a Tesla Model Y has 11 kilowatts of charging capability on the vehicle. And Teslas typically run 3 to 4 miles per kilowatt. So that's 33 to 44 miles charge per hour. Nobody in their right mind is gonna run an electric vehicle down to 0. Basically, when the vehicle is parked, it'll be charged. I've tried to ask our police officers what their typical day is like, and how much time do you spend at the station versus on the road? And actually have gotten no answer whatsoever. I assume they eat, and I assume they do their business, and I assume that they go to the station at some point, do paperwork and book people in or whatever. That's when you're gonna charge. Again, a 1 minute search says that they'll charge from 10% to 80%, 4 hours on a level 2 charger, not the 8+ quoted by our consultants.
Well, that was coded by Kim.
Well, that may be true
That
for
might be
Bolt.
what they were doing, but that wasn't the only reason they were cut at
It's
this.
$2,200 for the charging unit,
Yeah,
for an
we,
80 amp charger.
we are putting in the conduit for those and we're gonna put those in when we need them for electric vehicles, so.
Other questions from the public? Sealy?
Yes, I just wanted to add, in regards to the grant that was given by the scenic byway. I like to see that Meredith Smith get a little credit for that. She wrote for that grant. And the Heritage Commission has been working with the byway people for several years. And we've been trying to go after and combine everything, like with the parking and the walkway to Shaker Village. And that's not mentioned anywhere, and I think she deserves a lot of credit for doing that.
Is
Yeah.
this the same one?
Yeah, and then Meredith brought that grant forward and
Mhm.
we worked with Upper Valley Snake River Regional Planning Commission and myself. Yes, we did.
Money.
Yeah, it's a nice amount of money. Okay, other members of the public before I go back and take a second question from Gary? Okay, Gary?
Yeah, but I just have a question about Redlow and how is it we allowed the diesel exhaust not be on the budget in the original quote?
I didn't say it wasn't in the budget.
Well, I mean, he quoted an air filter system for the whole garage, which is like the dumbest thing you could possibly do, because now you're gonna filter 20,000 cubic feet of air versus maybe 1,000 out of the tailpipe.
Yeah, I'd have to look exactly what he did, but there was
Well, he did it before cost cutting. It was cheaper.
not necessarily.
Well, that's what he told me.
Okay. I'm gonna take questions from folks who are online on the town manager's report. Okay, seeing no hands raised, I'd like to move on to communications. Sadly, we have a resignation in our packet, from Ed McLaughlin, resigning from both CIP and Upper Valley Lake Sunapee Regional Planning Council. I would, entertain a motion to accept that with regrets.
So moved.
You have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Just a,
Abstentions?
just a thank you to Mr. McLaughlin
Yes.
for his
Yeah.
diligent work. and
Yes, yeah,
Quite frequent, very good thoughts in
absolutely.
both committees.
Yeah, when we say with regret, it's true, and it will always have a spot for him if he changes his mind. So, okay,
Can I ask you a quick question?
yes,
Are we supposed to have someone on that? Was he the last person?
On the Upper Valley.
Yeah.
Yes, and we'll be working on that. We're talking about that
Mhm.
to see if we can find someone that will serve in that capacity.
moving on to the business of the evening, we have the community nursing discussion and the scheduling of a public hearing. I assume you're kicking this up?
Yes. So last November, November 21st, I came to the board to update them that I had been meeting with the community nurse project committee. And, you know, we've been talking about a way to build a community nursing program here in the town of Enfield. We did pass out these little pamphlets to give you a little bit of information about community nursing, but we've met kind of back and forth, and then Emily from the police department has been meeting with them kind of on my behalf to continue a presence. And so during this, I met once before the turn of the year with the chief of the fire department in Lebanon about the possibility of expanding their nursing to the town of Enfield to help us out. And at that time, they said that they were not interested in that. They had a change in fire chiefs, and I don't know what other things changed, but Chief Wheatley, the new chief from Lebanon Fire, had called me, and he wanted to look at the possibility of doing an expansion of community nurses, working with Grantham, ourselves, and the city of Lebanon to fund a full-time nurse. So I got Chief Wheatley in connection with the community nursing committee that we've been working with. They've met a couple times. I've talked with them since then, and we think it'd be a good idea to move forward in that direction using 10 hours of community nursing. The plan is to fundraise to try to raise enough money to offset that, so we're not putting it on the tax rolls if possible. But I would like to turn it over to members of the committee who are here tonight that can talk to you a little bit about the community nursing program, what they'd like to see here in Enfield and what they've.
If you want to come forward, if I could ask you, so that it's a little easier for the folks online to see you and hear you. Plus, you're not talking into the chairs instead of the microphone. Hi.
Hi. So, good evening. I'm Steve Powell. I'm the co-chair of the Enfield Community Nurse Steering Committee. We've been in existence for a little less than a year. Our goal is to bring community nursing to Enfield, if possible. As Keith said, we have some other members with us. Kristen Barnum, Harrison Drinkwater are here. Donna Pigeon's with us remotely. And we also have Cindy Loring and Emily Curtis on the committee. And thanks to Ed, right off the top for his help over these months in negotiating to get us to this point. So I want to save as much time as possible for Kristen because she's our expert. We're really fortunate to have her living in the town, and all of our members are residents. Because she's one of the most knowledgeable people on the subject of community nursing in the Upper Valley. She is the executive director of the Community Nurse Connection, which is the brochure you have, which is an Upper Valley nonprofit that supports towns that are considering community nursing, that have community nursing, and that organization also supports the community nurses. So with that.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve, and thank you all for your time. I started as the executive director a little over 2 years ago for Community Nurse Connection. And one of the first things I said is, how come my town doesn't have a community nurse? You know, I live in Enfield and I know this is a great service. So I reached out to Cindy Loring, who is also a nurse, and we met over coffee and said, let's start a project. Let's figure out how to bring this to our town. Emily then quickly, I don't know how, I think she's Cindy's neighbor. We recruited Emily in this conversation and she helped us start spreading the word. So we did a noontime virtual, little 15-minute PowerPoint presentation, and Harrison came. So we said he's on the committee. And then Harrison called Steve and Donna and said, you're now on the committee. So that's kind of how we came together, as really a bunch of like-minded people who really think this is a good idea. About a year ago, we officially formed our steering committee and we started talking with our town manager about how can we make this happen? This is our vision. We really want to, our committee is committed to fundraising and advocating for a town nurse. At the same time, Ed was talking to the former fire chief of Lebanon and now Chief Wheatley about, could we contract some of their time? So it seems now all the pieces are coming together to have a community nurse project happen. And I know there's a lot of information on the brochure, but I like to tell a story because I think that really helps understand community nursing. So this is a little story about Jack and Diane. Jack and Diane live in town and they're both in their 80s. Diane has many chronic illnesses. She has lung disease, she has heart disease, and she has diabetes. And that's very fragile conditions to have together for an older adult. Diane has never driven, and Jack now has some mild dementia, and his physician has told him he probably shouldn't drive anymore. So here are Jack and Diane living in town for over 50 years. They don't have any children, and they don't fit the traditional regulation or rules for traditional home health or hospice care or your VNA services. So there's a big gap in care for them. Diane's been on the town website and reading the town newsletter, and she knows about the community nurse. So Diane calls the community nurse and says, this is what's happening. Can you come over and visit? So it's not urgent care. And the town nurse schedules an appointment to come the following week. She does a very in-depth assessment of all of their situation. And Diane really talks about her worries. Her worries are, number one, how is she going to get her medication? Now that Jack can't drive, how she's going to get these critical medications she needs. And does she need all of these medications? Next is her concern about getting food, not just getting food delivered, because with end-stage heart disease or with the heart disease she has, she knows sodium isn't good in her diet. With diabetes, she knows sugar isn't good in her diet. Meals on Wheels is great. Thank you for delivering, Harrison. But a lot of that doesn't fit special need diets. So the nurse makes a plan with Jack and Diane, a care plan together, to talk about how is Diane going to get to her medical appointments? Does she need all the medical appointments? Maybe she can assist them with telehealth while she's there at a visit. How is she going to get the proper nutrition? So it's a holistic plan of care that the nurse helps Jack and Diane with. She plans to visit them once a week for a couple of weeks to make sure that they follow through with the plan they put in place. Then she changes to every other week and now is seeing them, maybe once a month in person, maybe every other month on the phone for a check-in. What we know is that the nurse has probably, well, we don't know, this is what we're starting to really measure, has decreased calls to 911, has decreased the transfer from home to the emergency room because she's got these chronic conditions. So we're really excited to be, I'm really excited to be with these two gentlemen, and Donna, thank you for being on Teams, to really present and answer any questions you may have about community nursing and what you think it means for our town. So that was like my best Shark Tank pitch.
It was really good. Without identifying anybody or in such a small town. Does the board have any questions?
So my understanding is that it fills the gap between VNA and other home health care providers. that are probably not attending to an example of the couple you just described. Would you hazard to guess any quantification as to what your case might represent in Enfield? Are there 20 people like that, 30? What do you think? I know
Well-
this is a real guess.
Yeah, well, according to the 2022 census, 28% of the Enfield population is over the age of 65. There isn't real good information about the amount of chronic illness in those residents. The last report out was in, I believe, 2020 for the state of New Hampshire. And we can share that. I think we shared it with you. We can share that report on how many have chronic illness. But I don't have the exact most recent
Oh, no.
numbers. Yeah.
Would the program be eligible for, Medicare, Medicaid, subsidy?
It is not, we do not collect any payment from any insurers. So this fills the gap of what insurance doesn't cover. So Medicare, Medicaid would be either the VNAs, the local VNAs, or perhaps the Choices for Care or Choices for Independence program through the state of New Hampshire. So that we wouldn't get any funding through government or health insurances for this.
And for the initial year, at least, we're thinking of, private sources of funding as opposed to budgetary?
Yeah, we're looking at trying to get some fundraising, private sources, donations to see if we can stand this program up. It'll give us a lot more data on what the needs are in town. Another thing that was presented, I think I put in my report, but when we were initially offered this, Lebanon offered Grantham 15 hours, Enfield 15 hours, and they were gonna take the other 10. Talking with the steering committee, they decided that, let's take a small step forward. And so we talked with Lebanon and we're gonna take the 10 hours and do the 15 on the other sides and kind of start small, see where it goes, see how it works, and then we can adjust from there if needed.
And Kristen's organization collects data now on how many towns have community nurses in the upper level.
We have about 8 communities, so it's not just towns, so communities, sometimes it's 2 towns together, sometimes it's just a church, so it's 8 communities, and we do collect information and provide monthly, quarterly, and annual reports on interventions and outcomes, fall prevention. We also, part of my role is to research available grants and share information with the communities to help with ongoing funding.
So you'd be looking for things like letters of support from the select board, I'm assuming, and applying, if we were applying for something or.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one other thing that I would like, and we put it on the agenda to possibly schedule a public hearing. If the select board's in support of this, we would like to set up a fund, kind of like we have for the Mascoma Lakeside Park Fund, so donations can go to that and we can be the fiduciary for this program.
Eric, did you have a question?
Well, I traveled down.
I know.
Bunch of, so what's the administration plan? How's it planned to be administered?
We would contract with the city of Lebanon.
So we would simply
Provide
make
a
a payment
nurse.
to Lebanon.
I've been talking with the steering committee that, their committee structure may
Mhm.
change, possibly becoming a formal board of the town to do, some meeting with the nurses, oversight of how the program's working, that kind of stuff.
And is there already a plan for like how fundraising dollars would be applied across the program? And I guess what I mean is like if there's a grant to be applied for, do 3 towns have to apply or is there one application? And then the second piece of that is if somebody wants to make a private donation, can they decide which town gets the money? Is effectively what, I think.
Well,
you
it's
see what I'm saying.
split up if you see the.
But I see how it's split up, but I guess what I'm saying is like, say there's a grant available and all 3 towns want the grant.
Mhm.
And Grantham gets it. And the others don't because only one town's allowed to get it.
Well, I think
Yeah.
we'll talk about it,
Yeah.
but I think it could go to, we could go in together and offset, and there's a lot of what ifs in that.
Oh, there's a ton of what ifs in that, yeah. But then there's the other side where if an individual says, oh, I want to make a donation for this town's contribution.
Yeah.
Um,
That would be what our trust fund would be for, to
Right.
pay the Enfield
Yeah.
portion of the bill.
Right.
If you will.
Right, so I think there's a plan for that, but Anyway, so those are some things to think about. I guess the big one is, as we talk to people in town, is why is a new program the best way to address this gap
Mhm.
versus the programs that already exist? And why are existing service providers not filling this gap? And why is a new program the way to attack this problem?
So my answer to that is because this is the only nursing program. You know, so what I believe, and I am a nurse, so I'm a little biased. But I believe really a nurse's assessment skills are what are needed to really reduce the falls, reduce the 911 calls, and deal with a situation like Jack and Diane. There's nurses joke that we go into a restaurant, we've already assessed the person on the other side of the restaurant, saying they're short of breath, their color is gray, their fingernails don't look light, so they probably don't get a lot of oxygen. So we believe, Community Nurse Connection believes it really takes a nurse to provide this service. Some other towns have community health workers, and they more connect them with other resources as opposed to provide health education and really change the outcomes for these families and the towns. One thing we didn't mention is a lot of the town nurses also, especially when COVID was coming out, they provided education to the town. And again, it was at no charge, that community nurse, or they made flyers to put on Meals and Wheels that were given to community members. So we believe it takes the skills of a nurse to change the outcomes.
So why isn't the HMC pursuing as an example of our? Well, no, I mean, they're
No,
a
it's a
medical
very
provider.
fair question. I
And this
think,
is the question people in town are gonna
Yeah,
ask.
yeah.
And so if we don't
Yeah.
have answers to these questions,
Sure. Yeah, so Dartmouth Health Population does support Community Nurse Connection, our organization. And what we're talking to them about is passing through, is for them to give us more money and to pass through. I did have a meeting with Dr. Greg Norman and Dr. Sally Kraft about would they be supporting new programs? That is not on their plan for population health. Also, my opinion, and Donna, please jump in, you know more about Dartmouth than I do. But a lot of times when they fund projects, it's a limited funding. Where, then the towns and the communities have to come up with this money afterwards. And so a lot of the communities that have nurses, the people that have provided or received care want to give bigger donations because they know about the program. So it can continue to offset the cost of the town. Did that answer your question?
yeah, and have there been discussions with the community center in Canaan, which has been serving sort of the Upper Valley since DHMC pulled out?
Yeah,
How would that
I
tie
talked to
in?
Dr. Gardner, Ben Gardner,
Yeah.
who is one of my neighbors, so I can get him when he's getting the mail. Basically, we talked about would a community nurse work for that center serving all the towns? But really what we talked about is there's so much travel time between those towns that the nurse may not be able to see that population. The other thing is we really feel the way this works is being outside of the traditional healthcare system so that the town can define what that program is for their town members, which is a little different. Good questions.
We did.
One thing about, I'm a nurse, I apologize for being late, I didn't know we were meeting here. So I'm going all around town looking at
Cindy,
every
if you
meeting.
introduce yourself, because I know you, but.
Yes, I'm Cindy Loring, I'm
Thank
a resident in Enfield and I'm a nurse also. I think a lot of us remember in former years when we got healthcare, there was time for the provider or the staff that were with the provider to sit down and talk with you about things and how things were going. And I think we've all noticed a difference in how healthcare is provided now. There's much less time with the provider and you don't get to all the time express what your real issues are aside from your blood pressure or your blood sugar or, whatever it is. So I think this is one of the things that's been missing for people, that the nurse has the time, and this is her direction, is to assess and to really find out where the issues are and, what intervention needs to be done, or if the intervention is something, he or she can offer with education or discussion. That's it. And I'll just pass these around and take one.
Say, I would mention that there was some funding coming from Dartmouth to Lebanon for their initial startup of the nursing program, this community nursing. This is an expansion of that, and Chief Wheatley did sit down with Dartmouth and talk to them about expanding into this area with some of the financial issues they've had this last year, things going on that they were not at a point to expand this year with this program, but it will be an ongoing conversation.
And if I might just add to what Ed said, I'm Harrison Drinkwater. Since December of last year, we've been trying to identify foundations and grant applications, individual donors in the town particularly. And ironically, what's kept us kind of low key about this is we don't have a bank account. So we couldn't ask you to make a donation. We will now. If the town is so good to have.
What's your name again?
I think that raises a really good point and something it was another hat, lead a nonprofit, and we talk a lot about New Hampshire has the highest density of nonprofits in the United States. Yes, and so, I am lucky enough to be a part of one of those, but the question is always, are you making another nonprofit for the right reason, right? Or is it something that could be done through an avenue that already exists? So I think it's very important to consider doing it through the town or an existing avenue, like, you know, what Eric's discussing, what Ed is explaining about this. So I credit you guys. I'm not saying you don't need a nonprofit, but Enfield might not need their own. So, and it's very, very expensive to make another one. Oh, Donna.
Hi, thank you. So I'm Donna Pigeon. I'm a physical therapist. I live here in Enfield and I do work at Dartmouth, as Kristen said. So I just wanted to sort of reiterate what Kristen said, is that it really is filling a gap. So when we talk about the health services that Dartmouth offers and, you know, Community Health Center and other, healthcare providers offer, those are generally, you know, insurance-based services, and with that comes regulations. You can only, you know, and VNA services, you can only see somebody with certain, you know, circumstances, and, you know, and so this really fills that gap of people who would otherwise fall through the cracks. And I can attest to, I specialize in working with people with balance disorders, and particularly older adults who are at risk for fall, and have worked with community nurses in other towns. And it's just critical to have a nurse in the person's home with, you know, eyes on and hands on, and that nurse then can communicate with the person's health care provider. So the nurse would communicate with their primary care provider, you know, their physical therapist, or whomever the person already has for traditional health services, to help with the overall wellness of the person.
Thanks, Deb.
Thank you. Jen, I don't think I asked you, or Alice, I don't know if you have any questions or comments, either of you?
No, I have no questions. I do think the sense I'm getting is that one of the real functions of the community nurse is communication.
Yep.
Communication with, in a gentle and sort of almost family oriented fashion, which you do not get at a large hospital.
Thank you. Alice, I know you're in public health. I'll put you on the spot for a second.
Well, so I think, so I thank you, Donna, for talking about like the communication piece, because I was wondering how would you prevent the person's care from becoming like disjointed or fragmented if they're seeing this person, that person, and then you add another person into the mix, it can complicate things. So that's nice if one of their roles is like coordination almost. And then I guess, I think illustrating the gap really clearly is going to be important for our community to understand the value of it really, really clearly. And with maybe even concrete examples. And then I think that it would be really cool to see your evaluation plan. Like the things that you're talking about sound really exciting, decreasing 911 calls, decreasing emergency department visits. like, let's, if it's gonna happen, let's like track it and celebrate and see what happened.
Yeah, we do track and we have outcome reports. What we're really excited about as well is we had last semester, we had some Dartmouth Public Health students do some research on proving cost savings. And actually, we've had some communications with some community nurses in Maryland who have been gathering, not just preventing or proving those outcomes, but proving the cost savings. So we're improving our reports every quarter and would love your input.
Well, I think it sounds like.
Just following up on what Alice just said, very succinctly. As this may eventually drift towards a budgetary need in a future year, I think keeping track of the statistical effect within the town of Enfield and being able to present that, therefore not presenting specific cases necessarily, but instead presenting the effectiveness of the program within the community of Enfield for a potential future budgetary impact would be crucial.
Yeah, agreed. And I will leave a sample report if anybody wants to look at what a quarterly report would look like for the town of Enfield. I blacked out which town this is so that you don't know, but this is what we're currently providing each quarter of outcome statistics, and again, we're improving it. So and this is from Community Nurse Connection, which we work with Lebanon, we provide them the report so we can, even, I have a meeting with the chief next week and the nurses to talk about how we can make sure that the information is separate. So Lebanon gets their reports, Enfield gets their reports. But yes, the statistics, the information, the data is crucial.
Would you be able to contract with insurance companies who need this service from you? I would specifically mention that there's a insurance company that I have as part of my Medicare supplement that has this program and provides it to me.
I'll bring it back to my board.
Target Pilgrim.
Yeah, we haven't really thought about, so our organization isn't looking at building revenue where really our goal
No, I
is to build.
understand, but covering costs
Right,
and therefore being able to do more.
right. Yeah, it's very
Sometimes when
interesting.
you get into insurance, you invest more hours in the day on playing the insurance
Yeah.
game. I just, to throw that out there, I enjoy them so much.
Yeah.
I'm young and relatively healthy and you can spend hours with them over nothing. Absolutely nothing. So,
But it is a good example of a community, the community that
Right.
the insurance company covers,
Mhm.
so could they invest in a community nurse? Perhaps.
Or does the nurse take a look at what you have for tools in your tool belt and realize you have a tool you aren't using?
Right.
That's something that you might learn when you're doing that holistic overview.
The person they sent came from northern New Hampshire.
I
Well,
just circling back kind of on what Eric was talking about, I just have questions more for our internal team about if we were to create a committee, would it be somebody who works most closely with, say, the emergency services manager, right? Just in terms of structure. And then Enfield obviously has data about what kinds of incidents we're seeing where the ambulance is called out. So we probably could take an educated look at what.
We can know
You
them
might-
and we can work with
Yeah.
Lebanon. I mean, that's something else that I can do. If you guys want more information, is have Chief Wheatley come in. They're obviously looking to expand their program, so it's working in Lebanon for them if they're wanting to add more hours. And to do this, they wanted to add us on and add Grantham on to make it feasible to have a full-time nurse, so. They do have a part-time nurse too, so they're really expanding by adding another 15 hours, but they think the full-time nurse will help with recruitment and retention and some long-term staff instead of turning over a nurse all the time. And so I'd like to know where the select board would like to go. If we want to work on this program, we will need to schedule a public hearing to set up a fund. And I can also work towards bringing some more people in if you'd like to learn more.
I'd certainly like to learn more.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in favor of it. I'd like to see it proceed to the next step.
Yeah, same here.
Alice?
Yeah, I'm reading about.
So I think you've got a consensus. No, that's fine. You've got it. Alice is already doing research.
Ira Baya,
Want
and
to
I'm like,
schedule a public hearing?
Do you guys want to schedule a public hearing? So that we can, and I guess we would get more information within the public hearing? Is that what you want to do? Or do you want to do public hearing further out and do more information on that?
Where you guys want to do it? They'd like to get started fundraising.
Yeah,
I-
I think we should go ahead with
Okay.
the public hearing and find out what the public thinks about this also.
And then be prepared to answer the mercenary question at the public hearing of fundraising.
I just want to acknowledge Dave Beaufay for a second. Go ahead, Dave.
Thanks for speaking as public. As a physician who's dealt with insurance for a long time as well, before retirement. Generally, your insurance is great, but generally, any Medicare eligible service needs to meet their guidelines before secondary insurance will cover. Now, there may be special programs such as yours, right? But that's not necessarily universally applied. Question for you, Harrison. I don't know if you're, what your level of work with, if it, the delivery of food is. But as a rough proxy of perhaps, frail residents who may or may not be in, actively in the medical system recently, how many, such residents, might there be in Enfield? I'm not asking you to give you, to put you on the spot. It's a question that we may need an answer for down the road.
mm-hmm.
Sure. I'm not sure. Are you asking me based on standard deliveries from Meals on Wheels and people who might therefore,
That your group serves, yes.
well, Grafton County Senior Citizens Council has a route for Enfield, and it's done every day, every weekday. I see 14 people. Or make deliveries to 14 people in a 3-hour span. They
Okay.
cover about 50 miles
Mhm.
in that. Enfield's a big town.
Yeah, yeah.
So is that crisscross? I don't think that answers your question, except to say that in many ways, we're talking about Meals on Wheels approach to delivery of medical needs. It's that informal walk-ins and recognize what's the physical layout for a person. So
Yeah, well, it's a combination of that, and yes, putting, actually, another person putting eyes on.
Exactly.
on a resident.
Yeah.
And two, just getting a rough idea of potential numbers that services might be, benefit to in our community.
I know in one of our grant applications, we're expecting to see 50 distinct people in the first year making 350 different kinds of interventions, which is a fancy word for saying visits of some kind, over the phone, in person. And I think that's probably statistically very similar to other towns, and it builds from there. And I hope you can correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you,
And finally, for you, if I understand correctly, all services are provided by a registered nurse?
correct. Yeah. Or nurse practitioner, but if minimum requirements are registered nurse.
Okay.
Other questions or comments from the public here in person? Any questions or comments from the folks online? Okay, I'd like to go ahead then, since we have the consensus of the board is scheduled. Do we want to do next meeting? Is that too, we have a lot of stuff on our
There's
plate
a
next
lot
meeting,
next
but,
meeting, if it would be okay with you guys, I think June 1st would be best to give the time needed
and would June first give you adequate time to
for the
maybe
first meeting.
gear up some pre-marketing type materials and because I'm assuming you want to jump right in and have some more plans on how we'll proceed, how things will flow in terms of communication. Will that give you enough time?
We can meet and talk about that and how we're gonna get started.
Just sort of one minor, we had sort of presentation materials are developed for the public hearing. it'd be nice to have, because I know I don't actually know what all the resources in the Upper Valley are now. Right, so it's easier to sort of imagine that the gap exists and to understand that the gap exists. But there's gotta be somebody who's probably already done a slide of, everything from, DHMC does this, the community center in Canaan does that. There's this program that has visiting nurses, the VA does this, the Grafton County Senior Citizens County Council does Meals on Wheels. The county nursing home is, serves this population. Because I think part of the problem with healthcare is the complexity.
Mhm.
So figuring out some way to sort of capture, here's the resources that are here, here's the gap, this is what we're trying to fill.
A bubble
would be a great-
diagram. would be
good
really
idea.
Would be a really good
Yeah.
communication tool for people to sort of speak to what the conversation really should be about, as we go forward with this.
I think that's a great idea, and I think that information actually sits at 211 in the state of New Hampshire, I
Yeah.
think.
I know it exists, but like I said, I couldn't tell
Yeah.
you what that is today.
And I would go heavy on the visuals for
Yes,
folks,
yeah.
because as Eric's talking, I'm picturing a happy bubble diagram with overlaps, because when you go to explain something to somebody in print form, it is,
Yeah, no,
they don't always come up with the same visual.
what I just said sounds easy, but it's really hard.
Oh, it's, no, absolutely.
So
It's really hard.
we could totally,
You can call me
Eric
for
doesn't
help
ask
if
any
you want,
questions.
but I understand that that is a very difficult thing to do, but that's part of the value in going
Yeah.
through the exercise and doing it.
Eric's very good with data.
Just so the public hearing, is that the opportunity to do a PowerPoint? What is that?
Yeah, so the public hearings are legally required in order to establish a new fund. So we have a notice requirement, and I don't remember all the
Yeah.
days of legality, but
We'll get that done.
yeah, but they will set that up with you, but it's an opportunity to, again, present some of what you've explained tonight. I think your narrative of Jack and Diane is probably very helpful if there's a large public, but you can choose how to proceed together with Ed, and I think he can help you make
Okay.
a decision on what would be most useful for the audience. And then, so you would present, there would be questions from the board and the public. We would close the public hearing and vote whether to establish a fund. Is that
I mean, the public hearing will be mostly on establishing the fund, but I think it's really important to set the groundwork of
Why
what
we
this
did it.
program does and why the fund would exist.
So the hearing before the select board.
Yes.
Yes,
And
it's almost the same thing we did tonight, but then we open to the public to ask questions and
it will be warned to the public saying, come ask your question.
And warn in a different way than this is, right?
Yeah.
Right now, like, it's like, hey, come hang out with us. We do this twice a month and you have this long agenda. And so, well, some folks will see something on the agenda and come, right? And we have some regular attendees who we're thankful for. A very specific public warning is something that usually generates a larger audience. And I think we could probably help on,
well, and I can, yeah, and I'll talk to the city of Lebanon, Jim Wheatley too, and see if he can come talk about what they're doing and what the program would look like. That'd be a great time for him to be here. So,
I think it's fair to be optimistic about your program and therefore, based on a consensus from the board, and therefore with the town manager's input, the fundraising could begin relatively swiftly following a
right, that's why
optimistic
I
and
had
positive
indicated marketing type
public input.
materials.
Mhm.
So that you could kick right off. I think it's fair to be very, very ready to go.
give him a second.
It may not be the second, it's after the first meeting. I'll let
It's the
you guys
first
know the
meeting,
exact
so-
date.
We have letters all drafted.
Yeah,
I'll
we're-
tell you, we are so
You are
ready.
ready. This is
Yeah.
fabulous.
We have grant applications and
Yeah, this is great.
I actually have a few people asking me, when am I going to hear from you? When are you gonna hit me up?
The meeting will actually be.
It'd be a Monday, Tuesday.
Yeah.
okay.
I was about to say, you beat me to it. No. Same time, same place. Unless
And
people
it'll
get
be-
really excited and then we have to move the venue.
And it'll be first on the agenda.
Oh, yes, first on the agenda, right? After approval of minutes or
How,
before, do we need to move approval minutes or? Yeah.
how long would you suggest that we have to present? Or would you want it?
I'd say very similar to tonight.
Oh,
But with more visuals.
And if you want to do a PowerPoint, our team is available to project onto here, and it would obviously go out onto Teams as well. So if that would be helpful to you, and if it's not a helpful format, you just certainly don't have to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for coming. And
Thank
this
you.
is a big undertaking.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a good idea how many meetings you might have had. Emily has been a busy girl.
Emily can help you and I can help you.
Yeah, great. It helps a lot.
And I can put some of those on the slide.
No,
Yeah.
These are.
Certainly. That's what I always say. And Bill has lots of smart people. Kevin knows that. Kevin, you queued Kevin up.
Yeah.
Approach the bench. All right, Kevin. Who's starting? You were at.
I can. This is just a follow-up from what we've already been working on. At the April 3rd meeting, when I came to you, we left with the idea and the thought that we would be preparing rules and finalizing pricing to move forward with the rental of the 2 pavilions, one at Hughes Park and one at Lakeside Park. So in your packet is some information that Kevin put together. He used the rules we have now for indoor buildings, modified them slightly, and came up with the outdoor facility rental rules and procedures. I did add in there one place, we made a change to the application rental fees. Mostly based on if they're gonna rent something farther out that they need to pay for it within 30 days, and then there's a staggered reimbursement rate if they start getting closer to the date. So anything they cancel before 30 days, they get a full refund. If it's within that 2-week to 30 days timeframe, they get a half refund, and if they wait till the last minute, then they give up the money that they put down, because that really limited other people from being able to use that. So we put that in there, and then also just gave you an application, and then the fees are on the back page that we shared with you at the last meeting. So we're open for questions.
Do you have anything you want to say before we hit you with questions?
No, that's pretty much it.
Okay,
That's exactly what I was.
great job, go team.
Yeah.
Questions from the board?
I know that you had a meeting with the rec commission.
Yeah.
Recently to discuss this fee structure. How closely does this align with the recommendations that might have come out of that meeting?
Almost dead on.
Okay.
So what I approached them with, they were very agreeing with. They think that the fees, the prices are exactly where they wanted to be. The only thing they did ask was the nonprofit, what would happen with those? And me and Ed actually determined today what we thought would be best. If it is a nonprofit and the public is welcome, we wouldn't charge, because it's an event adding to our community. If it's a nonprofit private, or they're holding it just for themselves, we'd cut the fee in half, just so it's affordable for them to still use the facility, but then it's being reserved for them.
And then we'd also look at giving me the authority to waive those fees if needed, with a possible appeal process to the select board if someone didn't get their fees waived and thought they should have been. But I know we have like the land trust at least once a year, maybe twice a year during the summer, uses the pavilion to have their annual or their meetings, their monthly meetings, and we've allowed them to use them. And I don't see any reason not to continue allowing a group like that to use the pavilion to host their meetings, but.
Well, like the sailing club is already making donations to the park.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think there's enough, that's kind of what we talked, there's enough variables and things out there that we need some flexibility to be able to work within that, but I also thought it was good to kind of put appeals a process in place if someone didn't like the decision that we.
Likewise, with regard to a refund, you'll exercise the same discretion if there's a particular case that something has occurred that somebody really could use a refund for a very earnest reason.
Yeah, we could do that. If you. give me
Just to be
authority
fair.
to do that.
Well, since you're using your discretion to justify the fee structure, in a small way, I think it's only fair to allow you to have the same discretion to say about a refund fee that there might be that hopefully rare occasion where you want to have a little flexibility.
Well,
Yeah.
if we move forward with this, if you put something like that in the motion, then we can write that in there and that'll give me the authority.
I was intrigued when you made your original presentation about the sign option. Will that go up right away?
That will go up.
When we can get them ordered.
Yeah.
Okay, but it's early on in the process.
Yes, yeah.
I think that's very important for the process
Mhm.
to be successful.
I agree. Because I think if it's not, there's not signage out there, you always have those people that are like,
Confusing.
well, what makes it yours? And then if they have a sign they can point to.
You mean people like me who
Exactly.
walk in and are like, oh, you're gonna have to move
Exactly.
because the food pantry is here this afternoon?
And the only other thing I noticed that I would give up on, and it's particular to today, people are gonna move that picnic table right in. I don't think we need to send anybody to move it out every single time.
Mhm.
It's gonna float around.
Yeah, and it is, and I did,
We put it in there not to move them, but
yeah.
I know,
Basically,
I saw that, and
Yeah.
I wouldn't spend a great deal of effort and frustration over the fact that the table's gonna move around like a ping pong ball.
I put it mainly because I don't want to drive by on my way to work on Monday morning and see all the benches, all the picnic tables from
Yeah.
the edge of the
I
lake.
agree, I
underneath,
agree.
So,
As a principle, it's good, but I
Yeah.
wouldn't
yeah,
break a sweat over it.
no, understand, yeah.
Setting expectations is 90% of the battle.
they are extremely heavy.
I know they are.
I don't think people are gonna just cart them across the park, but
Definitely. have-
Yeah.
I think it's a very fair way of doing things. Obviously, in my other hat, I have a nonprofit that does use the space sometimes, and so can certainly appreciate that kind of openness to things that have, inure to the public benefit versus a private item, and I think that's very fair.
Following this, will you come back with some rule structure that advises or changes the community center use? Or are we set on that?
we were not doing that with this part. The one thing that.
No, I know we're
we
not
added
this
here-
part, but I didn't know if it was a follow-up to this.
We didn't plan on it. If there's something specific you'd like
No,
changed. we
just wanted to
would,
know
but
if we were looking at
It's
that as
very
well.
similar.
Mhm.
And then I did add in here items from the built-in rental rules, just
Mhm.
changing the fee structure to work the same way, so they're
Yeah.
the same.
Very good.
Other questions or comments from the board?
There's one comment as a compare section. So the storage section mentions that multi-day events can store stuff overnight. We should somehow explicitly say the trash cannot be stored overnight.
Valid, yeah.
That should be one of those unequivocal, that is not something like under no circumstances can you store
Good
trash.
point.
And are they responsible for taking the trash?
Well, and I would,
Yeah,
That-
they are.
That's very
That's-
clear.
That is in there.
That's in there.
To me, that's.
And it's clear that it needs to be removed at the end of the event.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those of like, if
Okay,
you're gonna nitpick an agreement,
Oh, gosh.
you know.
You act like it's gonna happen. I just.
Well, the Bears on Lock Haven today might say something.
Yeah,
about
true.
it.
Yeah.
But other than that,
We can see this circumstance coming
Yeah.
forward, so.
Yeah, good point.
That's a good point. Yep.
does it state in there, I remember reading this, does it state they have to get approval to leave stuff overnight?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Well, no, it says unless a multi-day event is scheduled or permission is obtained from the town manager. So if they were to schedule
I
a
would-
two-day
I would
event,
change that order
I-
and.
yeah, however, I mean, I'm not gonna suggest how to fix it. I'm just saying like
Mhm.
garbage is one of the things that we
Well,
have
that'd
to
be one of the things to
be
say.
unequivocal about.
I say
Yeah.
garbage and food sources,
Yes. Yeah.
because
Right.
bears don't care if it's been opened before.
Right.
Ask me about the short-term rentals out our way,
Right.
leave their coolers
It's
outside.
very clear the intent is things like that, who
Yeah.
cares? But we wanna.
So there are two motions. It's on the final. Yep, final page, it's double-sided. So I would entertain them.
the question from the
Oh,
audience.
I'm sorry, yes, Steve?
That's all the question. Just, I'm not having seen the proposal, in print. Is there, damage, fees as,
Yeah.
with the community? building?
Yep, it's very much aligned to how. the
It's a nicely significant, security deposit. Not something anybody's gonna walk away from.
And if you aren't good, we're gonna strap you to the thing and put Cheetos on you overnight. I would entertain a motion.
I can do so.
That'd be fabulous.
I move to authorize town manager or their designee to implement rentals of the Hughes Park and Lakeside Park pavilions to Enfield residents using the fees and in accordance with the outdoor facility rental rules and procedures as presented to the select board at the May 1st, 2023 meeting.
We add as presented and amended, and I'll put in your.
As presented and amended. Then also I move to authorize a change in the refund policy for building rentals as presented at the May 1st, 2023 meeting to align the refund policy for rentals of all town property. Are we authorizing and amend as amended?
No,
Not on
wasn't
that one.
amended.
You don't need that for you to have the discretion that we just described.
No, I'll put that in the first
You
one.
put that, all righty.
Second, both of those motions. Can I do 2 for 1?
Yeah, it's a combined motion.
Okay.
Is there any further discussion from the board? Discussion from the public presence or any folks online?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Bridget. Cemetery, Bridget.
Sorry, I know it always comes up that way. My bad. It's on my phone that way.
I know.
So I'm just curious, like, because I have not seen it as well, the written proposal. Do we have staffing ability to check these facilities after events are taking place, if they happen on the weekends? Because I know we've had that conversation and it's bopped around as far as like the community building.
We'll be able to do it very similar to we do the community building. Someone will go by or see it after the event. It'll be a little bit easier on the outside structures with police patrolling that, you know, we won't necessarily be able to communicate all the time when we have events, but we can ask them to go through there. And if they notice something being not in the right order, then we can make note of that.
In terms of cleanliness, I know we've over the years struggled with rentals and
Yeah.
lack of cleanliness. And obviously no one's gonna show up right at the end and check it. So is it the same thing? You take a picture, send it
Yeah.
in and.
Yeah, and I put that under damages and I put it in bold, so hopefully people read it. That if they discover any damages, they need to take a picture and email it to my email, which a lot of people don't actually realize that you can go into the properties of a photo and see what time it was taken. So then you know if they damaged it and are blaming it on other people.
Right.
So,
And I would say it's just been a struggle in that regard.
Yeah.
And we have religiously given people who do not deserve their deposit back a deposit. And I would ask that
We will.
we
be
stop
stricter on
giving
that.
people their deposit back.
that will be changing
is-
soon.
yeah. Stop giving them their deposits. I think we've held one since I've been on this board that I can recall, and it was, I mean, and don't let the people who do it rent again because they trash the place and leave it for the next folks. I've never done an
I
event.
wasn't gonna say anything, but I was wondering, you know, like, I'm so into like, oh my gosh, please don't trash the Lakeside Park, please, please, please. And I wondered if it would be too much if we were like, you won't get your security deposit back and you won't be able to rent
No,
Lakeside Park.
definitely do that. And
Yeah.
on rec desk,
I'm
we
so
can
glad you
block
said that.
people. So,
No, I think we're at the point where, you know, renting a public place space is a privilege. There aren't enough of them. And if you can't behave like a right proper adult, I don't think you deserve to get another rental.
And on my rec desk, I can actually ban a whole entire family. If they are like, well, and the reason I
Yeah.
say banning a whole family is you will have parents who get banned from things that will start registering things under their 3-year-old's name.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait, hold on, how's a 3-year-old?
Yeah.
So you can prevent them from register or requesting a facility, and events if.
and we also set them up where we have approval rights. So they'll come in, they can register, it gets held, but then we get the final
Well,
approval.
if it's a 3-year-old's birthday party and the 3-year-old's the only one that lives in Enfield and everyone else lives in Lebanon, well, look at that.
You joke, but.
Oh, I didn't joke. That wasn't a joke.
Where I grew up, there was a house on the town line,
Yep. You put
and
the-
they chose which kid went to which school based on where their bedroom was.
I have sat in more than one meeting like that where the kids slept in the kitchen.
Wow.
Yep, it's important sometimes. So this is great work. I know it was,
We didn't take a vote.
oh, I'm sorry. Yes, thank you. So we have a motion,
give it to
we have a
Kevin, you want
combined
to?
motion on the table and there was no further discussion after this discussion. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously.
And thank you for your work, Kevin.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Looks good.
Aye. Don't move. You're staying for the logo.
Yeah.
You think we let you off the duty?
You're on the
You were on the committee. All right,
You ready?
we are presentation and approval of Enfield logo.
So we sent the narrative out to you a little late today, but on March 21st of last year, so a little bit over a year ago, the select board authorized the establishment of an ad hoc committee. I won't read all the consisting of, but we put this committee together. We met quite a few times through the summer. As we came into the holiday season, we had a really good idea of kind of what we wanted, what direction we were going. And the second paragraph there, you know, we did some brainstorming events and we ended up coming down to what we wanted our logo to signify was the Shaker heritage, the outdoor resources we have, the outdoor recreation, that's a large cornerstone of this town and the primary focal point. And then we talked some about, you know, the significance of Whitney Hall and then we tasked Don Archambault to go back and pull all that together and make it look really good for us. So I did not put in here a list that I sent to the logo committee, but she put together 4 to 5 different creations and we took that forward. And the one that you do see that you brought forward, and I'll hold this up, we can pass it around a little bit, was, I'm gonna say pretty much chosen unanimously by a whole bunch of people. I showed a lot of my staff, all the different renderings, every single person I showed picked this one. The logo committee talked about it. They very quickly focused on this one, made a few minor tweaks and changes. And then we played with some variations with it with Dawn too, and ended up coming back almost to the original one she did after some changes, and I can talk a little bit about those, but and then as we looked at it a little bit more, if you look, I did put in your writing that a lot of what we were able to squeeze in this, if you use your imagination a little bit, really fit with the guiding principles of the master plan as well. And on this page 9 of the master plan, it talks about the goals and guiding principles of the master plan, which was protecting natural resources, honoring our unique history, reinforcing the traditions of New England settlement, support the rural character while embracing technology, maintain and enhancing public recreation, and providing safe transportation, including trails, pathways, hiking lanes, which again goes to the outdoor recreation that we have. So if you look at this logo, the primary thing we were really looking at was the 3, what I'm gonna call waves on the bottom, which, you know, signify the water and the land we have here. Some people have said, you know, it's Mascoma Lake and Crystal Lake, the 2 lakes we have in town, the hills. I think it really signifies all of that, the outdoor resources that we have, the outdoor recreation that we take. You know, it's so important here in town. The little gray wave or swoop on top, we tried to mimic a little bit, and this is where we played for a while, but we tried to mimic kind of the Queen Anne shape of Whitney Hall. We did make it stand a little bit taller, more prominent like the Whitney Hall roof does, but we never could get it just to fit right. So by smashing it down a little, it started to take that shape. And then when it did that, we had talked about and we realized that it kind of mimicked the little bit of the back of the Shaker ladder chair, which we thought kind of pulled that in just a little bit. And so we really liked it. I liked the simplicity of it. It's something we didn't really talk about at the logo committee, but if you look at it compared to some other logos and things, I know Hanover has one with a lot of rays and buildings, and it's just pretty detailed. And this one's really simple, which I think signifies our Shaker heritage as well. And then I did put in the write-up that Matt Young really thought that the word Enfield in the swoop almost looks like a train with steam coming out, and thought it signified the rail trail as well. But I think people started seeing a lot of ways that this tied in. And then with that, we had one member, Madeline was absent the last day, but other than her not being at that meeting, the logo committee unanimously recommended this come to the select board for possible adoption as the new town logo.
Can you hold that up, Dave?
If you square it off in front of your face, they'll be able to see it.
Where's all the information?
I think we're gonna talk about.
This is the new town logo or proposed town logo, and it's backwards.
Oh, look at that. I guess we don't have mirroring sets.
If they want to see it.
So Kevin was on this team too, and I'm just gonna pull him in, and I was on it as well. And I would say a lot of thought started the process. We had a really great brainstorming session, and I haven't given it as a report because I felt that we would get the final one and just have one discussion. But we did sticky notes where people just took all of the ideas and stuck them to the board about what we think about when we think of Enfield, what we associate. And we came up with a lot of common themes that you just divided into kind of more categories. And I feel like this logo represents most of the categories and is very fluid. We talked about using it across departments, like your department using it.
That is one thing we talked about with the New Hampshire is on there, that more interdepartmental, we could use it, just put Town of Enfield Recreation or something there if they wanted department specifics, and it wouldn't change the look of it at all. It would just take the New Hampshire out and replace it with the department.
And this won't replace the town seal, right? We still have a seal. So this is the town seal with, ignore the little hole in it, but, so, you know, for official business that requires a seal, the seal would stay.
Well, and there's some things that it just makes sense. I know I've worked with Bridget to start ordering cemetery signs, and we decided that the seal on those makes a lot more sense. It's more formal. It's gonna stay there. It's not gonna replace everything, but we do think it gives a little bit more of a modern look and a fresh look for marketing and those types of.
And one of the things that's very challenging with, in particular, the seal is that, while it looks like you can see the details in large format, if you go and try to do stitching or screen printing and a lot of modern things that are used to identify town, you know, any workwear, hats, sides of doors, you lose the ability to see that detail, even though it was, you know, obviously meant and done for the right reason. So it will give us options to make it that it's clear that whatever we're doing is ours.
Well, and I was gonna do that and I never did, but if you go across the bridge in Hartford, going out of Lebanon, they have a sign there with their seal on it that's white and black, and it looks just like our cemetery signs. And from any distance, you can't tell that it's not an Enfield sign. It looks the same, and I think something like this would just add that distinction.
Another cemetery we have to take care of.
No, that's a bridge. We don't want it.
We definitely don't want it at the bridge. I think something that I learned too, coming out of this, you always learn something new in committees you don't expect to learn, is that I learned we access some of our materials over the river. So I had no idea we were crossing into Vermont. So I was like, oh, why do we care, right? Well, it turns out we hop around Vermont a little bit too. Better pricing, we go places. So, what are your thoughts?
I think it's great. It's fresh. It has a certain modernity to it. So I think it's a nice step.
Yeah, I think it's visually very strong. I like the idea. We're also keeping the seal for more formal purposes. So I think it's the best of both possible worlds.
Yeah, I like the simplicity.
It's nice, I like it.
Any comments from the public, Dave?
Not to be a naysayer, but it sounds like you have, you know, a great group process to come up with this. But I would like to know, as a taxpayer, the cost of the staff time in this and any re-signage that's gonna be necessary as a result of that.
Less than what Hitchcock spent on theirs.
We do not want to be compared with that hot debacle.
That's not a very good answer for me.
No. So this is something that we had encumbered funds from a prior year for
Well, we,
The design itself that we had encumbered funds, right?
yeah, that was spent actually from the recreation department from the year before.
Yeah.
That they were working on this when I called timeout. Let's do it townwide instead of department specific. And then signage and those things, there's obviously gonna be a cost, but it's not gonna be something we're gonna go out and just start replacing signs. As things need to be replaced, as things need to be updated, we'll switch over.
So we're talking a few $1,000s? So,
Probably. I mean, I can't tell you what the long term is. I know DPW has some decals pulling off their doors now, and they've been asking me when we were gonna get this done, because they wanna put this on instead of the
This is not a
seal, but
DH style rebrand, right? We're not gonna go ripping things off and making new signage just to cost money and charge it out to people.
Yeah.
Yep, go ahead, Celie.
Ed was just going over you were talking about the chair and different things and part of the master plan. Where is it on that? All I see is Enfield and I'm missing. All I see is the name Enfield with
I can,
it's just, yeah, it's a little bit of symbolism. I mean, we didn't put a chair on there, but
So some of the thoughts they were thinking with it is how there's two different blues, and this one's a lot bigger.
yeah,
This will be Mascoma Lake, the hills between the lakes, and then Crystal Lake. And then this here is actually kind of the roof line of the top of Whitney Hall. We did make it bigger, but it just looked funky. But then now smashing it down, it actually takes more of the back of a shaker chair. And then this New Hampshire can be taken out, and you could put, like on the side of the trucks, they were gonna put Town of Enfield, Highway Department. Me personally as a rec director, I'm gonna put
okay, they know it's
recreation.
that, but
Yeah.
it's a good visual thing with all lines in a different color.
as a history buff, I think it's a fun thing to document exactly the description you described and the process that you arrived at this, and just throw that on the website for a future generation to see it. It's a good in-depth investigation as to how this was arrived at, and it's a fun little thing to write down. Where did it come from? And just, it's there for people years from now who say, where'd they get this thing?
Yeah, and logos
It'll be
change
there,
over
and
time.
it'll be a wonderful thing to just document it, I think. That's my history.
Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, the other thing is it's easy to reproduce.
Yep.
It is easy to
Logos
reproduce.
is You can't reproduce half of them. This is easy
Yeah.
to reproduce.
Yeah.
I don't know what it means, but I can reproduce
This
it.
is great for a piece of
Right,
stationery.
and
This
You
is
can
easy.
tell me that's what you say it means, but don't tell me that's.
one of our
necessarily.
committee members owns a vinyl.
I'm sorry,
We
but
learned a little
it's
bit
easy
about
to
that.
reproduce. It'll go on the letterhead.
Well,
well, and that's what we talked about.
Yeah, it will.
We did like
Okay.
single stitch embroidery.
Yeah, fine.
It looks fine. It's easy to do. Some of the detailed ones are very difficult.
We're going shaker style simple, and I think that was a really important theme that came out of the logo committee was, we talked about things that are important. So we talked about shaker chairs, the pegs, the different, the oval box, what would be something that would be true to our heritage that you could reproduce without, like, I don't know, going bankrupt, trying to stitch something. So this is, I think, a really good meeting of all of the different ideas that folks brought in. Because we're not gonna stitch a stone wall,
We ready for a motion?
I absolutely am, if everybody else is. Have we neglected anyone online? Okay. Go for it.
I move to approve and adopt the logo presented by the Enfield Branding Committee and to authorize town manager and their designees to implement its usage as the official Town of Enfield logo as deemed appropriate.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion from the board? All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously. Thank everybody for their work.
Yes, absolutely.
It's great.
We'll look for, hey, does this mean that our new digital sign has a new brand?
Maybe
Maybe,
when it's appropriate,
when it's appropriate. Yeah.
but there is a space left on that
Okay.
purposely.
I figured it wasn't an accident. Let's move on to award Whitney Hall Design Build Contractor RFP.
We'll talk about this a little bit now. Let Tracy pipe in as well. The MPAC committees worked through a very similar process that we did for the public safety building. So we put out an RFQ looking for qualifications qualified contractors. We received 2 back this time, which wasn't as many as we'd liked, but that's what we got back. It was Trumbull Nelson and Breadloaf. We went through their qualifications. Of course, both of them were qualified, so we invited them to participate in an RFP process where we got a little deeper into the numbers, what they would be charging for their work on this process. And then we also invited them to an interview, which was held last Tuesday. They each got a 1-hour interview where they gave us presentations and we were able to ask questions, and it was really good. We talked after the meeting for a while, and ultimately the MPAC committee voted 5-0 to recommend Breadloaf Incorporated to be awarded the contract for the Whitney Hall project.
You want to add anything?
No, that's a good summary of it.
Questions from the board?
I'll be the one with the question. So we faced some challenges with our friends at Breadloaf along the way, and largely in part due to the gentleman who passed away. So I don't want to come off as picking on them. Are we confident they've kind of recovered to the point where they can provide service level that we need?
I think they have.
They showed up with a very extensive team of their staff. They are a full-fledged company that does engineering, architectural, and other civil engineering and structural engineering, et cetera, and MEP on site within the company. And they showed up with the entire team. They even showed up, one of their fellows is a professional at historical renovations and will be of assist when the time comes, we hope, to potentially get some historical grant money. So it was impressive. There was a freshness to their approach from a previous presentation that on a project that they did not get, meaning the emergency service building. And that was nice. That was good.
I do also think, some of that was the architectural issues that we ran into, but looking at the floor plans that were ultimately designed and brought forward, I don't believe there's gonna be a lot of changes to those plans, so I think we're almost past that point. So if we're talking about speeding up the project as well, I think those plans are gonna be done relatively soon, moving on to their MEP team to look at the mechanicals of this building and what we could do to move that forward, so. We have I put the floor plans out to staff, and the library's been looking at theirs, so we're ready as soon as the select board decides to award this, that we can get moving and finalize those plans.
That was my next question, was how did the library folks, so they're the representative from the library team that you.
Yeah, Shirley's on the MPAC committee, and she can speak if she wants. I have talked with Kate in the library, and I know they're talking with the trustees soon about any changes to their plans that may need to happen after COVID, and just thinking about them for some time. And they have a new library director as well, so talking about those moving forward.
Shirley, did
If
you have
it's-
anything? Oh, sorry.
If there's a plan to begin the construction of Whitney Hall prior to the construction of the Emergency Services Building, what are the plans, if any, for moving town employees and the library?
We're still kicking that around a little bit. I'm not too concerned about the town employees. I think we have enough space in other buildings. We may not be all centrally located somewhere, but we can definitely put people in places where the public can easily access people. The library is gonna be a little bit more of a challenge, but before we have any solid plans, we really need to be working with our contractor too on how this is gonna work. Is it gonna be phased level by level? Are we gonna kick everybody out of the building and whatnot? There's a lot of different options, and they even stated that during the interviews, that there's many different ways that we can do this. They all have different logistical problems, and they all have different financial concerns. So there'll be things that we'll be looking at to determine if it is feasible, but it's something they said that they'd be willing to work at and that they could do.
They were open to the possibilities of, for example, beginning something on the 3rd floor now that it's empty.
Mhm.
I guess my biggest concern would be for the health and safety of our employees. There's probably some things in those walls.
I've heard some living things. You guys have seen me downstairs being like, there's a bird in the wall, there's a bird in the wall. Because I get very nervous when I hear a bird in the wall.
So just making sure that we prioritize the health and safety of our folks, and obviously the residents coming in too. Huh?
Did you say snakes?
I said better than snakes.
They might do
No.
I grew up down south.
Yeah, I have a snake in my bathroom wall.
You know this?
I saw
Oh,
it go in.
oh, good Lord.
Well,
I will never be visiting your house.
Okay.
just don't go in the bathroom.
So, I mean, it's a possibility. I don't know if I'd call it a probability yet, but it's something that we're looking at, and I did go talk to the library immediately and said, just be looking, be thinking, you know, if we do need to move that fast logistically, it's gonna be a challenge, but I do think it's a challenge we could rise to if needed. So.
Shirley, did you have anything you wanted to add or say? I'm gonna include you if you'd like to be included.
I think Ed has covered it quite well. I am very pleased that Bread Loaf is going to be the contractor. I think that there will be, the changes in the design will be minor and that they'll be taken care of quite soon so we can proceed. And it's an exciting time.
Any more questions or comments from the board? Public? Okay, I'd entertain a motion. Oh, sorry.
I had a question.
That's okay. No, don't be sorry.
Understand.
I
I
missed-
can't hear too well, but so. In the design, did you say there is an option for some changes, or is everything gonna be the same, like the layout and the offices and?
The way the building looks, I don't think will change at all. We've talked a little bit about maybe moving some interior walls, some small changes to offices where a couple things might be located, but it's very minor changes on the inside.
You're not gonna save the stage?
The stage got ruined years ago, I'm
Been
afraid.
talked about.
It got destroyed when I was a kid and that was quite the decision.
You want it saved?
Oh, I love to save the stage. Are you kidding?
You gotta extract that darn elevator from it then. That's what ruined it.
That's coming out.
Isn't it?
Yeah, as long as we don't try to save costs by keeping the elevator and save
No.
cost.
No.
Good,
That's,
cause that was a point of discussion and I was like, get that elevator out of here, man. That was a big mistake, but yeah, that was unfortunate. One of those learning things. So I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to authorize the town manager to negotiate and enter into a design build contract with Bread Loaf Incorporated for the purposes of completing the design and construction of the town of Enfield's Whitney Hall project, not to exceed a total construction amount $5,802,150, and hereby authorize the town manager or his designees to take such actions and execute all documents that may be necessary.
I'll second. Sorry. Go right ahead.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any final words? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? It passes unanimously. Thank you all. And if you would convey to the MVAC team, I know you continue to work with them, how much we appreciate their hard work.
I'm right here.
You're right here. Are you the whole team, Mark?
Tracy, yeah.
Sometimes
You
it feels
are,
that way.
I know. You are nominated to take that good news back and thank them for us. Thank you. Okay, so we are on to award RFP for municipal plow truck. You have it in your packet.
This one's fairly self-explanatory.
The only question I have with regard to the plow truck is where's the extra $24,000 coming from? In other words, the CIP authorized $200,000 for a plow truck. This is $224,000. So I'm questioning simply, where's that money coming from?
Sure, we might have to look back at the CIP.
CIP says $200,000 and it's out of ARPA funds, which means that has a cap. So we need to talk about where we
I
get the
thought the
24,000.
ambulance was.
The ambulance, then the police, and then whatever was left in
Left.
ARPA would go to the plow truck and anything over and above would come out of CIP.
Okay.
That's a good question. I guess the other thing I'd want to call everyone's attention to, just because we haven't all looked at the purchasing policy together yet, is that whenever there is a bid that is not the lowest cost bid, there's usually a justification of why we can take the lowest cost. And in this case, this is the middle bid. So I don't know if,
Well, I think those bullet points make that clear.
yep,
I agree with the bullet points. I don't have an issue with that. It's an import to be able to maintain a standard that the town has proven to be successful.
yeah, I don't have a problem with it. It's just this is a requirement of our purchasing policy, so I want to call everyone's attention to that extra step.
But I do have to question, as Dan is here, have we thought about where we're getting the extra fund from? Now, there's a little bit in the in capital improvement, or in the trust fund. About $14,000.
I have not at this time. We can
Are you
come
gonna
back
swear
to
on a
you.
Bible or whatever laptop that you can find it somewhere in your budget, or do we do this for another day?
I don't know if I can find it in the budget, but if you guys would be okay with us coming back to you to find $20,000, I'd like to get the truck ordered. But
Dan, you've got an opinion. Come on now.
Select board is the agent to expend.
Oh, I know.
That's not a
I
dog.
did see that $14,000
Plan is the
sitting in the
plan,
trust
but you're
fund.
the
That's actually in
agent
this
to
report.
expend.
Yeah, I mean, it,
Used for,
yeah, we'll have to look at what it can be spent on
capital
all those
expense,
things.
yeah.
But I
We
think
get
it'd
it
be
and that
worthwhile
money, I
coming
think,
back.
was discretionary
it's
of
fine.
the select board to spend that money, I believe. So that may be part of it.
And the bottom line is we're not gonna get it for $200,000. No one.
Well, no, and it wasn't a warrant article because it wasn't bonded, so
Right.
you are the agent to expend.
Okay.
Yeah, the only complication, minor as
changed
I
the plan.
believe it truly is that we did put it within the ARPA category.
Well, we put portion of
A
it. We
portion.
didn't say all of it would be
Yeah,
used.
yeah. That was the overflow.
And this was actually the truck that was gonna be partially ARPA funded and partially CIP funded.
Yeah, CFP, we never talked about it being over the 200. That was what was presented to us, was that we thought it could be 200,
It's more than,
but everything's gone up.
We
So I'm
knew-
not questioning.
yeah, we knew it was gonna be more than what the ARPA funds did, but we would have to come back and get a motion to spend out of CIP. So if the board would be inclined, I would like to award this, get it ordered, and I can come back to you with a plan on what fund we will fund that.
Sounds fair.
What's the pleasure of the board? Someone want to make a motion?
I move that we accept the proposal offered by SG Reed Incorporated for the standard international truck outfitted with Viking plows and municipal dump body.
Second.
Any further discussion? Or,
This will have the new logo on it, right?
Yep.
Whoa,
I don't know, we might stick the old one on just to,
This is gonna have the new logo.
yeah. New things, new life, new logo, yes. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously.
Tell you that.
I'm right, you guys. Ooh, now we honor on to the excitement of the evening, award RFP for the 2023 portable toilet rentals.
what?
On the agenda.
Oh, okay.
Logo on.
Where is it though? Oh, it's on the back of, is
out of order.
It's on the agenda.
it?
Oh, where it is?
I was gonna say, is that on
It's
the
in the
back?
back. A couple of these.
What? Oh.
Here we go.
Some
On
of
the
my
back of the
backs are
plow
blank.
truck.
and some aren't.
Oh, paper,
Like very,
back of the pavement.
things are
supposed
to have
blank backs
And we'll let you know, it's a small cost, but our overall cost for the year appears to be about $7,000, so it.
Where did
exceeds
these
the-
go? Refresh my memory, please.
Lakeside Park, Shakoma Beach, the boat ramp.
The, Shaker Ball Field.
Yeah.
Ball fields.
are we? So obviously there's pricing for standard and accessible. What, just curious what we do. We do one
We-
and one or?
It depends where they're at. I have asked.
Homer was
Jim-
1 and 1, but I don't think the others necessarily were.
No, I asked Jim. At Lakeside Park, we put an accessible one. Shakoma Beach, we do not because it's not accessible to get up there to where it's at. But
Okay.
if we only place one, I have asked him to do accessible toilets, and if we place two, to do one of each.
Okay.
Any questions or comments from the board?
And this includes servicing on a predetermined weekly basis. No one has to call. It just happens, right?
Yeah, they come out
Automatically
on a regular basis.
on a regular program
I'd
basis.
actually say weekly, I don't know the.
Well, but on a
details,
regular
but
basis and-
basis, yeah. And then
Okay.
they do come out if we call, if they're full or if something happened.
Yeah.
Any further questions or comments from the board?
And I believe the company that got the bid right now is the same one that the state uses. So they'll be coming through to service the ones that are set at.
Crystal and quote ramp, those
Mhm.
types of things that the state uses in town, so.
Anybody else on the board have a question or comment?
They're so
Oh, go ahead.
ugly.
I know.
They're so ugly.
You can plant flowers on them.
I miss you.
So that's a very good point. I don't want to belabor the subject. Because it's, you know what, but why does the state pay for the one at Crystal and we pay for the one at our boat landing?
Cause that's a state boat land
Okay,
and the one over here is not.
it's a town boat landing.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Dave?
With my work with the Mascoma Lakeside Park, peak summer seasons, they can get pretty nasty. And not pretty, but nasty. Are we the ones that monitor that and call them back if they need to for extra visits, or is the contract with them something that they're monitoring that?
Well, they monitor on a normal basis, but if we have a problem that we know, then we contact Jim. You know, if they're stinky midsummer, we don't call them to come in for a special one because that happens when they're sitting in the sun.
No, stinky and full.
Yeah, if they're full, then yeah, contact
Okay.
me or Jim and we'll.
If you
Or
see
get them
hooligans
out of
pushing them over, call the police.
Is it unfair or inappropriate to put a small sign on it that says who to call if it is an issue? I mentioned particularly because Dr. Buffet is absolutely right about the one last summer at the Pavilion Park. It's so heavily used.
I can look and see if they have one on it. It would be to call the company, but I think they, you know.
Or to call a town representative who would then process it accordingly. Just give folks an idea of something to do. Because he's pointing out the one at the park, which last year was pretty bad at certain points.
We talked about, as we do the new website, possibilities of forms. That's a possibility for like a QR code and a quick form ticket, so that it's not calls and
We
calls. I'm not
can,
saying
I'll
can't.
have to look
It's
and
a lot
see
of
if they
options
have a
on how
place
to
to
do it.
put them. We're not gonna put down stickers or something.
No.
Are we gonna put the new logo on the porta potty?
Then you wouldn't be able to open the door because it wraps around.
Maybe we could put just the wave. Okay, I would entertain a motion. Does someone wanna make it?
I'm not.
I move, we accept the proposal offered by Ron's Johns of Newbury, New Hampshire to provide portable toilet rentals for Enfield facilities during the 2023 outdoor season.
We have a second.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions, passes unanimously. Thank you, guys. The stinky
The
subject.
most important thing we've done tonight.
I know, that's what I thought. We're on to awarding the RFP for 2023 paving. This might be the most exciting thing other than nursing. Pavement's exciting.
I read online the list of streets that are proposed to be done this year. That looked fine. Is this tonnage based on those streets or am I confusing RFPs? In other words,
No,
there was an RFP that listed particular
If
streets.
it listed them for this year, then that's what they're.
Okay, so
paving.
those streets were calculated to require this tonnage.
And-
There's an RFP that lists streets, is what I'm saying. That's
Yes.
all I'm wondering.
Yeah.
Okay.
If that RFP listed the streets, then those are.
Okay, that's
the
these.
streets that-
Okay, that's all I was questioning. Yeah.
I regularly get hit up about the skim coating that's gone on in town over the years, in particular.
The Gregor shim.
Yeah, whatever that hot mess on George Hill and Lockheed is, I'm not gonna be nice about it, because I honestly can't tell you how often someone hits me up and I can't disagree with them. Because as a native New Englander, I'm a little bit of a curmudgeon and I see it getting scraped back off the road. So are we moving away from that?
That does have nothing to do with this. I have
Okay.
talked to Jim and Jeremy
Okay.
about that. I don't,
So none of this is going to into that practice.
no, those types of practices are usually when the road's coming apart going into winter, and then they do that and we do that ourselves.
We didn't even do it going into winter. Did it.
As you and I discussed, we did it on Union Street this past year before paving,
There'll be a shim before paving.
but we won't necessarily conduct the shim ourselves.
I don't know what their plan is on that.
No,
exactly,
I'm not
but,
speaking of their plan.
I
I'm
mean, you
speaking of
always
self-performed.
You always do a
skim.
shim, or you should do a shim before you do the top coat. And last year, the company did a shim and then a top coat.
Yeah, you have to do it to correct the.
Well, we self-performed.
Did we do the shim last?
We did the shim last year and and the one on George Hill is what is being referred to as a self-performed shim, and it was
Yeah, there's a difference. between
bluntly
you
a little
do it and then
less
you-
than successful.
Then you do a finished pave over.
No, not questioning the need for it, and I know the process very, very well.
Yeah, I was just wondering if it was. part of it.
Questioning whether it would be a self-performed shim or we'll step away from that as an object of our regular self-performance.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd have to talk to them about that. I haven't asked if they would. I'm sure, I mean, a self-performed shim will just keep the cost down quite a bit. And
If it's
I mean, have all these self-performed shims they've done been disasters, or is it just the bad year?
yeah, and it was no finish coat over the top of the shim, which
it's actually.
That, the concern that was brought
There's
to
the
me
problem.
multiple
You
times
have
was
to follow up
that it was
with
dangerous for
Just
bicyclists and motorcyclists
Right.
and
Or you.
it made a mess of your car and
Traffic.
I understand all those
It's a
things.
waste of money.
The horse didn't
And you have
like
to
it,
have
you
the
know,
right equipment to do it.
all of the. Yeah, I think, and,
It's a process to be looked at carefully.
and I guess I would say, we know from past history that sometimes they get into the road and these roads, a lot of them are built with corduroy, which is a technique used with like old logs to build up. So sometimes they get into the road and there's logs and there's rocks on top of it and you find out that it's not as straightforward as you thought, so. Yes, so rely on their good work, to get through. This is a much better price though than the other folks.
I'm pleased that it's Blacktop. They're a good firm.
Yeah, and their price is fair. And entertain a motion.
I can read that. I move that the town accept the proposal submitted by Blacktop of West Lebanon, New Hampshire.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously.
All
Aye, yes. Okay. We are on to approval to apply for a moose plate grant. We love these moose plate grants, eh?
we did not get one last year, but we did apply for a similar one last year. So we applied last year to replace the steps in the front and do a little bit of drainage around the side. Liam spent quite a bit of time out there looking over the building and he recommended that we improve the granite steps in the front. We do some weatherproofing repairs to the building exterior and then do some emergency lights on the inside. Some chimney work was on the exterior part as well. So this came from him with the budget and they would like to apply for a moose plate grant. This adds up to like 15,000. I rounded up to 16 to give them a little wiggle room to apply for up to $16,000 to do some work on the center median.
So this is Liam.
Liam's working with, I think, the Heritage Commission.
This goes through EJ, it's in partnership with the Heritage Commission.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot about it.
Yeah, so they put together all these projects over the last 6 months.
Mhm.
And a lot of it is in order to even start having any, I mean, events might be a strong word, but you have like an open house, improving the access
Mhm.
is an important piece of that. And they've been working with Liam of what's required to have,
Mhm.
Yeah.
you know, up to code access while keeping things like the granite steps. So I think it's gonna, they've been working at least 6 months trying to put together the whole package.
Well, and I did talk to Liam that you know, we should put this one in, the grant's due really soon, but I think one of the next big projects we need to look at is handicap accessibility and those things to continue moving this building forward.
Next big grant's buy some land.
We have to do some strategy and goal setting before we take on another project. I guess my, question would be, we had previous Moose Plate grants, and did we ever get the floor system so it's safe?
Yes.
Okay, so it could be lightly used.
Yeah,
Okay, that's great.
this is like the last step to make it so that you
The
can,
envelope is
you
sealed.
can lightly use it, is
Mhm.
keep the roof in shape,
Mhm.
you know, don't ever let that go. And then make the access, because the floor is now, I think Liam has signed off on the floor as
Yeah,
far
the
as.
floors, well,
Right.
we used it last year
Yeah.
during the,
Feel like there's no
days, there were
railings.
quite a
It's-
few people and.
The granite steps are sloped in the way that old New Hampshire granite steps slope after
Yeah.
a century or two.
Yeah, it takes them short.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know,
I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to authorize the town manager to apply for a Moose Plate grant on behalf of the town of Enfield for repairs in an amount of up to $16,000, and hereby authorize the town manager or his designees to take such actions and execute all documents that may be necessary.
Second.
A second.
Excellent. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention passes unanimously. Good. Fraud policy review.
So we brought the fraud policy before you. It's one of the policies that we need to review on an annual basis. We will be putting some more in your packets in the near future. We plan to put those in your packet and then hopefully talk about them at the next meeting. We can do this with this one if you'd like, or if you think it's, I mean, you can go ahead and approve.
Did you just change the
Reaffirming
select
it.
board language to align it? Is that the?
That was all second change.
Right.
Whatever it said, Board of Selectmen.
Yep, and that was
Select board, and that was the only change that was made.
That was it.
Good.
Do you feel like this policy is, working well as a tool, or is there anything you wish was different?
Yeah, no, I read through it again today and I didn't see anything in there that really needed to be changed. It really just outlines the policy that, the department head shouldn't be doing investigations and it has to do with fraud. I get involved and probably will get legal and counsel involved very quickly.
Did the trustees of trust funds have an opportunity to review this?
I don't know if they reread this one or not, you know?
I don't know if it affects them.
No, it doesn't
It-
affect them
it
with the
is-
last one.
It is directly related to them, unfortunately. So it was, I'm not saying they did any malfeasance. This is so that we have. This is so we have due diligence steps, so that we're thinking about this is also when the auditors ask us what we do about fraud. And they're gonna call you guys all this year, as they do every year. They're gonna say, we have this fraud policy, so don't forget about it. But, not to make light of a very serious situation, but we really do need this policy in place, so. I'm happy with it if you guys are. I just
Yeah.
as soon reaffirm it. I would entertain a motion to I guess approve it as revised, because we have that smaller revision. Reaffirm and,
I don't know that that's a significant change that
okay.
What change?
select board.
Oh, that's already in there.
It
So
is.
all we're doing is
That is
reaffirming this
Reaffirming,
policy.
I don't think that you're still the same board. It doesn't
Yes.
change anything.
Who's making the motion?
I move that we reaffirm the fraud policy as noted.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions passes unanimously. Next up, committee appointments. We have Thomas, Bernier, Smith, and Afiero.
So these are all applicants who are looking for reappointment to positions they already hold. So Keith Thomas for CIP, Andrew Vernier for the TIP committee, Wendell Smith as an energy committee alternate, and Stevie for the Heritage Township.
Any questions? I would entertain a motion to approve the slate as presented.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions, passes unanimously. All right. Then we have administrative items, so I assume we have a bunch of signatures to go around.
Yeah.
Do we need, you don't need any motions on these, are just signatures, is that
Just
fair?
signatures.
Okay, then we will do public comment while we sign our hand.
Can I ask a question? It pertains to what we'll be signing on.
Yes,
The veterans tax credits for these fellows who are noted as being total disability. Are we capped at $2,000 tax exemption?
Yes, we have an amount that was voted at town meeting of what it would be.
This past year, we voted the 2,000.
We
I don't
re-
know.
Did we reaffirm it this year?
We did it, I think.
We
there
did
was a small
reaffirm it
amount
this
of
year.
discussion about the amount, if I recall correctly, but I don't, they didn't
We
change
didn't really
it.
change the amount. That's been
Change it.
done for a long time.
There's two things. One, RSA is define what the range you're allowed to do. And then town meeting makes the decision.
Yeah, the RSA allows $12,000.
Right, no, that's what I'm saying. The RSA sets the range and then town meeting sets the amount.
And I know that this year we didn't discuss specifically the amounts. So if this needed to be changed, we would put it on next year's town meeting?
If you wanted it to be changed, an article on the warrant for next year. It'd be done.
I would suggest that
You
budget
can't change
committee
it
have
this
some
year.
conversations about it, that's fine.
I'm confused. Why are you saying 2,000 and these also 200
Keep going in your sheets. Further down.
on the document?
I'm gonna keep passing these to.
At
So
the
some
top,
of the-
in the top line of the ones that say total disability, it's checked. And then those amounts are listed as $2,000.
And
Okay.
we don't
Yes,
typically individually discuss these unless there's a
We're
question,
not
but,
individually discussing.
no,
them.
I'm just saying,
Saying generically, the
no,
amounts.
that's not what I'm saying. Let me explain the process so that folks understand.
Okay.
Julie goes through this all and takes care of this work for us. So if we did have a question, often
You
it's good
sign
to
and
ask
keep
her
reading.
Yes, ma'am.
in
Yes, sir.
advance, so that not that you can't ask here, but if it's a specific question, you can ask Julie, because she is the one with the knowledge. I should do this so that I'm not out of order.
I can add that to look at, and we were gonna be looking at the elderly exemption credit as well.
Certainly a fair. All right, let's do public comments. Do we have any public comments? Sealy,
Yes, I just want to bring up again, the grant that we received and that, the $700,000 grant. And I think, I'm very excited about it, and I think all of you should be very pleased, because this opens up our town, once it's all done, for much more recreation. It brings in people, it will take the byway, and we have extended that byway for the historic, the Enfield Center. And we have, it also hopefully will come down Main Street, where we'll get the parking. It's a big jump for the town. And we've always wanted to have a path from the Shaker Bridge all the way down to Shaker Village. And that's gonna happen too. And I just think it's gonna be wonderful for this town and for the people. So. Anyway.
I think you're absolutely right, and it's something that we've been thinking about and actually planning for quite a while.
Right.
Just never really came
Exactly.
together,
Yeah.
and now it has.
I think it's important for folks to understand that there's been a scenic byway committee, there. Some changes in the state that have kind of slowed things down, but our team has remained committed to our portion of the byway. This grant is a limited section, but still very, very important. It offers alternative transportation, instead of just focusing on cars, which I think it honors our heritage and the importance of our place. And it ties two sections of town that have always had, had to get in a car and drive there. I think it's a really exciting time, unless you're a cyclist who moves right along and likes traffic, and then you probably use it more often than the rest of us. Do you ride out that way too?
Yes.
Yeah. So,
On the current.
yeah,
Right with the correct.
it's very, very exciting, and, hopefully all of the players that we need will cooperate.
Just a couple of things here. Ed has resigned on Upper Valley Lake Sunapee. We need two commissioners. We've been going with one commissioner for the last, I don't know how long.
The town manager is one.
The town manager's one if he's appointed.
Well, we have one on there,
Okay.
on our list.
Then we need somebody to take the other one.
Yeah.
The problem with it can't be somebody on the planning board. The reason being, their meeting is the same as our meeting. So,
Oh. You got any ideas?
nope.
All right, further public comments?
There's a lot
Online,
of select board members that serve on that.
Now, isn't that interesting?
Nice historical notation.
If you ask for it, there you go. They only meet once every 2 months.
do they meet in the middle of the day?
No, they meet at 5:30.
Oh, I'm sorry, during the planning
It
board.
comes with dinner,
And they come from.
comes with a pizza.
Wow, I can tell you, I
Yeah.
can't do that because I don't. Pretty sure it's not gluten free, so. My gosh.
Maybe after I'm retired.
Okay,
Oh.
I'd still like to get that parking space taken out in front of the
Oh.
library.
We've been
I've been
talking
asking
about
for
that.
For a good 10 to 12 years, but
Hey, wait,
doesn't seem to.
very
I'd
exciting.
like, off the subject, but similar, I'd like to talk about what the rights are of the phone company to take over that entire width in front of them that does not have a sidewalk and therefore no parking. The plot plan doesn't show that they own that property right out to the street. So question, I don't know why a sidewalk was never put there. And there happen to be two vans there this week, I noticed, and
Oh, yeah.
remind me of the subject. Their plan doesn't show that they own it all the way out to the street. They own the same amount as other places like the bank for that. You know, I don't know, just a thought.
I don't know, that always goes to the surveyor though, because usually it's the right of way passes over the adjoining land. So the question is where, yeah. So who
Same
has,
time we get rid of the parking space, maybe we can actually put the sign that's supposed to be there, or not the one that is there. Because it says no parking between these signs, and the other end of that sign is the stop sign down at Main Street Route 4. So every time a police cruiser parks in front, they're actually illegal park.
And the Stadies.
And the Stadies and everybody else.
details.
Oh, yeah. No,
Those are state signs, aren't they?
they are state signs.
You know how that goes.
Pick your fight.
Right.
We have entirely different battle lined up for that space.
Okay.
Ed is truly working on it. We won't give it away right now, but there are discussions about a different use of that space.
6 more.
Listen, I'm signing as fast as I
Oh, no, you're doing fine. I just noticed on the ground.
Someone tell us a story about something awesome,
But
because we're gonna be here all night.
Yeah.
Any more public comments, and we can just close the meeting? All right. If there's no more public comment, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move, that we adjourn.
And I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? I'm not even asking for abstentions. It passes unanimously. Oh, sorry, I'm flipping them over because